Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Daily US. I am Matthew Schuchman, and today we are talking about Nobody 2, the sequel to the smash hit, the surprise hit, starring Bob Odenkirk, of course, Nobody, which is a very John Wicky type film for those who never seen it. And we get Hutch Mansell back for a second go round, and where you may have thought that this was going to be an abject failure, where it couldn't live up to the surprise hit of the original, it does a pretty good job of holding up the torch. So. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the positives. Look, I know there are a lot of people out there just like me. I know I'm not alone in this, but I was a Mr. Show fanatic from back in the day. Ben Stiller's show, before even Mr. Show, watching Bob Odenkirk back then. I've been a fan of this guy for a long time. And when he started doing more dramatic stuff, it was great to see. And then as he got into this action section with Nobody, it was crazy. And I know he wanted to do more. So seeing him back in action in this way, where also, again, being the badass, we're still being fallible in those situations where he's not just dominating everybody else and getting away with it, is always great to see. The comedy holds up. The story does a great job of trying to ape a little bit on what we saw previously. And just as it is about to get to the point where you feel like you've already seen it before, they switch up gears and change a little bit so you don't feel like you're just wallowing in Nobody again. And it's great to see everybody back. I was afraid at one point when because this revolves around the family kind of going on vacation together and some stuff that happens while they're on vacation, and they take Christopher Lloyd as as Hutch's father straight from the get go on vacation, but. Where's Rizza? Where's his brother? Why does his brother come along for vacation? So I was afraid they were going to leave him out of the fun, but luckily Rizza does appear later on. Um, there's also like it's a wonderful job they do in not trying to be pure action in a lot of ways. There are scenes in where you don't see some of the action and then just cut back into it because they're playing toward that point of the story in a way, and they're playing toward trying to be clever with things in a way that aren't ruining the fun for everybody. Because if it was just pure action, we may get bored after a while. So kind of playing into the fun of it in that sense is also a smart move. There is also, I would say, one of the most recently great inventive kills involving a water slide, which I was not prepared for because they kind of red herring you into thinking it's going to be something else, and then it turns out to be pretty crazy. I mean, it's a little over the top, but it was fun. But then let's start with a little bit of some of the negatives, and there aren't that many. And I'm not trying to say, because I also didn't know Sharon Stone was in the movie. I'm not trying to say that Sharon Stone wasn't good in any way whatsoever. But I don't think she learned a lesson from Catwoman, in where her version of the over-the-top villain is too comical, or too, when I say comical, too comic booky in a way. Not too funny. It's too over the top. There's a balance that was never met, and things moving so quickly and trying to understand why characters could be so comfortable hitting those spots at certain points in the story with it being so quick. But in the same breath, I also think that's kind of a positive because they don't have to waste time on things that don't need time wasted on them. But I put it in a little bit in the negative column because I can understand where some people may have a hard time reconciling that in their own brains because a lot of people are just like, oh, this is moving too fast. How can this happen? But I appreciate in a lot of ways that they do that, but I can see where it can be a negative. So I will put it in the negatives column. Other than that, also, no end credit scene. Sorry, guys, don't stick around. I apologize to anybody in the studio who wanted people to stick around for nothing, but don't stick around. That was a little disappointing. And hopefully that doesn't mean there's not going to be any Nobody 3, because I think at this point we all kind of want a Nobody 3. Even though at that point, then I don't know how you're going to try and, just like John Wick, turn it into something a little more different. We'll see. I'm not sure. But until then, final grade B+. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you next time.